I used to think my life was just ordinary, quiet, forgettable. But the truth? I wasn't ordinary. I was invisible, not because I had no voice, but because my family chose not to hear it. I'm Aaron. That's my name. But inside my own house, you'd hardly ever hear it spoken. My father, Victor, only ever called me the dumb one. My mother, Marielle, preferred to sigh whenever I entered a room, like I was a burden interrupting her perfect picture. And my older brother, Darren, well, he was a golden child, the heir, the shining star that lit up every corner of our family's world, while I was left standing in the shadows. It all came to a head on the day that should have felt like a celebration, Darren's graduation. The ballroom was dressed like royalty would arrive at any moment. Polished marble floors, chandeliers dripping light like liquid gold, and tables so perfectly set it felt like a magazine spread. Guests in tailored suits clinked glasses of champagne, all buzzing about Darren's brilliance. His name floated in the air like a song everyone knew by heart. And me? I was there, too, standing quietly at the edge of the crowd, holding my own glass that no one bothered to refill. No one noticed. No one cared. When the time came for my father to speak, he didn't even glance in my direction. He strode up to the podium with a proud smile that seemed carved in stone, his hand resting on Darren's shoulder like he was a crown jewel of our bloodline. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming through the room. "Today, we celebrate not just Darren's graduation, but the future of our family legacy. Tonight, I am proud to announce that Darren will inherit the helm of Vail Enterprises, along with $75 million, the company's primary estate, and..." He paused for dramatic effect, flashing that smug smile of his. "A brand new Tesla Model S, symbolic of the speed and vision he will carry us forward with." Applause erupted. Glasses clinked. Guests rose to their feet, as though they'd just witnessed the coronation of a king. Darren basked in a glow, his smirk landing squarely on me like a dagger. And in that moment, standing there under the glare of chandeliers, I realized just how small I was in their eyes. Not a son, not a brother, just background. But then, something happened. Something none of them saw coming. As the applause still echoed, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned, expecting another waiter clearing glasses. Instead, I found a man I didn't recognize. His suit was simple, not flashy like the others. His eyes were steady, serious. Without a word, he slipped a thick envelope into my hands. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "It's time," he said, "to tell them who you really are." And just like that, the ground beneath my feet shifted. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight of possibility, the weight of truth. And though I didn't know it yet, opening that envelope would change everything I thought I knew about my family, my brother, and myself. To understand what that envelope meant, you need to know what it was like growing up in my family. Because the truth is, I wasn't just forgotten in one moment. I was forgotten for a lifetime. From the very beginning, my brother Darren was the centerpiece of everything. He was the chosen one, the boy who could do no wrong. And me? I was just Aaron, the afterthought, the spare part no one asked for, but ended up with anyway. I still remember our dinner table conversations. Father at the head, sharp as a knife in his crisp shirt. Mother to his right, her gaze always trained on Darren like he was the sun itself. Every night was the same ritual. Darren aced his math exam today. Father would beam, lifting his wine glass. "Of course he did," Mother would say, patting Darren's hand. And me? I quietly mentioned I passed my gym class. That was when the laughter would start. Father's booming chuckle. Darren's smirk. Mother's quiet sigh. "Gym class?" Father would say, shaking his head, "Congratulations, Aaron. You managed to walk in a straight line without falling over." It didn't matter what I achieved. It didn't matter how hard I tried. Next to Darren's golden halo, everything I did looked gray. And Darren knew it. Oh, he knew. He wore his crown proudly, strutting around the house like he'd already inherited the world. I can still hear his voice, mocking me as I scrubbed grease off my hands after a shift at the local diner. "Look at you, Aaron. Covered in dirt while I'm headed to a networking dinner with father's colleagues. You really are the family mascot. I wanted to hate him. But hate is complicated when it comes to your brother. Because even though he mocked me, even though he thrived on my humiliation, there were moments, small, fleeting moments, where he wasn't the golden boy, where he was just Darren, my brother, like the time we played baseball in the backyard, and he taught me how to hold the bat properly, or the night our father's temper exploded and Darren, for once, stood in front of me, taking the brunt of it so I wouldn't have to. Those flashes of humanity confused me, because they made me believe, maybe, just maybe, there was a real brother beneath the arrogance, a brother I could trust. But the truth? Darren belonged to our parents' world, not mine. He was their perfect reflection, their golden heir. And I was, well, nothing more than the shadow trailing behind him. I remember one Christmas in particular. Darren was given a brand new Rolex, wrapped in velvet. My father announced it proudly, as if the entire room should bow. "And Aaron," he said, almost as an afterthought, "here's a new set of socks. Try not to lose them." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I forced a smile, but inside, something was cracking. It wasn't about the watch. It wasn't about the socks. It was about the message. Darren was everything, and I was nothing. And my mother, she never failed to remind me. "Why can't you be more like Darren, Aaron? He's ambitious, confident. You just exist." Those words lodged themselves in my chest like glass. So, by the time I stood in that ballroom years later, watching Darren bask in the glow of $75 million, a mansion and a Tesla, it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't new. It was just the final act in a play I'd been watching my whole life. And yet, deep down, I remembered something else. Something my grandfather once told me. "Don't let them convince you of who you are, Aaron. You'll know the truth when the moment comes." At the time, it felt like nothing but words. But standing there, humiliated again, those words began to stir inside me like embers waiting for fire. The days that followed were suffocating. Silence wrapped itself around me like a noose, pulling tighter with each passing hour. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead I sat there, mute, broken, and hollow. Every time I looked at my phone, I half expected another text from her. Something, anything, that would explain this nightmare. But there was nothing. The house felt colder. Every corner reminded me of her. The faint scent of her perfume on the couch cushions, the half-empty coffee mug she had left on the counter, the framed photos where she smiled as if forever loyal. Now those smiles mocked me. My brother avoided me, dodging every chance of conversation. His silence was confirmation enough. I didn't need words to know the truth. It was written in his refusal to look me in the eyes. At night, sleep betrayed me. I replayed every moment of our marriage, every laugh, every fight, every promise whispered in the dark. And I asked myself the same question over and over. Was it all a lie? But the hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the silence, the crushing weight of having no closure, no explanation, no voice on the other end saying, "I'm sorry." And that silence hurt more than any words could. I couldn't keep pretending. The silence was killing me, but the questions inside me were worse. Each time I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't recognize the man staring back. His eyes were hollow, his shoulders slumped under the weight of betrayal. One evening, I finally spoke. My voice cracked as I asked my brother the words I'd been choking on for days. "Is it true? Did she choose you?" He froze. For a moment, I saw guilt flash across his face. A flicker, but enough. His silence was louder than any confession. That look was all the answer I needed. The walls of my reality began to crumble. Memories of family dinners, shared laughter, the unshakable bond one thought we had. It all felt poison now. Trust, the foundation of everything I believed in, was shattered. But underneath the pain, something else stirred. Anger. For the first time since that devastating text, the fire inside me burned hotter than the ache in my chest. The cracks in the mirror weren't just in my reflection anymore. They were in my soul. And I knew one day soon, those cracks would shatter into something unrecognizable. The silence between us became unbearable. Every second in the same room felt like a battlefield, even though no words were spoken. My brother avoided my eyes, and I avoided his, but the weight of what hung between us was suffocating. At night, I would lie awake replaying every moment. The late-night calls my wife brushed off, the sudden excuses my brother made when I asked for his time. It all made sense now. The betrayal wasn't born overnight. It had been crawling through my life like a shadow, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. But now that I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And with every passing day, anger grew sharper, cutting deeper than grief ever could. I wasn't the broken man staring at the floor anymore. I was a storm building, waiting for the right time to unleash. The thought of revenge whispered in my ear, tempting me with visions of justice. And though my heart still bled, another part of me, darker, colder, was ready to answer that call. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about taking back power that was stolen from me. And I promised myself they would both feel what I felt. Revenge isn't born in the heat of a moment. It's crafted in silence, shaped by patience, sharpened by time. I knew if I stormed into their lives with fists and fury, I'd lose before the fight even began. My brother would laugh. My wife would cry, and I would look like the bitter fool they always believed me to be. So I chose another path. I began watching them quietly, carefully. I tracked the way they moved, the places they met, the lies they told others to cover their tracks. Every detail mattered. My rage wanted to strike fast, but my mind whispered, wait. In the mirror, I no longer saw the man who begged for love or fought for scraps of respect. I saw someone else, someone my brother and wife never believed I could become, someone dangerous. Piece by piece, I built a plan. I didn't need to destroy them in one blow. I only needed to pull one thread at a time until everything they built together unraveled in their hands. And the first thread was already in my grasp. For years, I wore their opinions like armor. It fit so tight, I forgot who I was underneath. But when the envelope opened and my grandfather's handwriting declared what my family had hidden, something loosened. Confusion flipped to a steady clarity. I could feel it in my bones. This was no longer about proving them wrong. It was about claiming the life someone had already seen in me. Standing on that stage, the room looked different. The chandeliers were no longer lights for a spectacle. They were windows showing who people really were. My father's smile stayed on, thin and brittle. Darren's smirk caught at the edges. My mother studied her napkin. Their reactions were all a script I recognized, controlled, denial, and a desperate attempt to redirect the story back to what they wanted. My grandfather's letter wasn't a pat on the back. It was permission. Eldon had watched us, had seen more than acts and awards. He chose me because I hadn't hardened. He chose me because I understood people, not just profit. Those words changed what I believed I could be. They gave me the right to step forward without apology. But stepping forward meant more than standing on a stage. It meant becoming someone who could run a company, carry a legacy, and do it with the humility my grandfather expected. I didn't have illusions. I knew boardrooms weren't won by one speech. So while the room buzzed, I started learning. That night, after everyone left, I sat with the documents spread on my kitchen table. I made lists. Short term, secure legal counsel, verify the signatures, protect the assets. Medium term, read the financials, meet the managers, understand day-to-day operations. Long term, reshape the company culture. Small steps, deliberate moves. No spectacle, no revenge. I reached out quietly. An old mentor who had known Eldon took my call and didn't laugh. He told me about the values Eldon wanted preserved: integrity, fairness, steady hands. He connected me to people inside the company who had been sidelined by my father's style. They offered data, stories, and a surprising amount of relief at the possibility of change. Meanwhile, at home, the family reacted in the only languages they knew: fury and performance. Victor paced late into the night. Darren practiced a smile in a mirror that suddenly felt exposed. My mother asked if we could keep things civil in public. They tried to gaslight the moment, weaving rumors that I'd forged documents, that I'd staged a scene. Old tricks. I expected them. They would bruise, but they wouldn't break me. My awakening was quieter than I imagined. It wasn't fireworks or a sudden transformation. It was compiling small wins into confidence. Every reported irregularity I uncovered, every manager who offered quiet support, every page of the company's ledger I could explain aloud, stitched courage into me. I turned humiliation into homework, anger into preparation. The envelope had been the spark. The work after was the flame. When I walked into First Family meeting as the man named on the papers, I carried a binder of facts, not theatrics. I had counsel, allies, and a plan to show that stewardship meant more than profit margins. The old Aaron would have trembled under that spotlight. This Aaron had studied the plumbing of the business. There was a strange peace in that shift. For decades, I had measured myself by the yardstick others used. Now I had my own measure. Competence, integrity, and proof that being overlooked wasn't the same as being unworthy. The awakening wasn't revenge. It was a responsibility I decided to keep. And for the first time, I wasn't terrified of the future. I was ready to build it. The night of Darren's coronation was supposed to be untouchable. Polished speeches, cameras flashing, and applause rolling like thunder. For them, it was already history in the making. For me, it was a night everything shifted. I stood in the shadows at the edge of the ballroom. The envelope pressed to my chest like a heartbeat. My legs shook, but the letter inside burned hotter than fear. My grandfather's words echoed in my head. One day, when a moment comes, you will know it. This was it. The master of ceremonies finished the introduction. My father, Victor, raised his glass with the ease of a king toasting his heir. Darren stood tall under the golden lights, basking in it all. The company, the mansion, the Tesla, the applause. My mother leaned in close, whispering something to him, and they laughed softly. Their world was perfect, untouched. But perfection cracks when truth arrives. I stepped forward. My shoes clicked against the marble, echoing louder than I wanted. Heads began to turn. At first, only a few guests noticed. Then, like dominoes, whispers spread. Eyes followed me as I walked toward the stage. Victor's smile froze. My mother's hand tightened around her champagne glass. Darren, ever smug, smirked as if I was about to embarrass myself one final time. "Don't do this," my mother mouthed, shaking her head. But I kept walking. When I reached the front, Victor's voice boomed, trying to cage me with authority. "Aaron, step down. This is not your moment." I felt the sting of every dismissal, every insult, every year of being invisible. And for the first time, I didn't step back. I stepped closer. "No, Father," I said, my voice cutting through the hall. "This moment belongs to me." The room fell silent, utterly still. 100 pairs of eyes locked on me, waiting. Victor's jaw clenched. "You are making a fool of yourself." Darren chuckled under his breath, shaking his head like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "What now, little brother? Going to tell everyone you passed gym class again?" His mockery only sharpened my resolve. My hands shook, but I lifted the envelope high for all to see. The lights caught the wax seal, the faded signature. A ripple of gasps swept through the crowd. "This," I said firmly, "was left to me by Eldon Vale, the man who built everything you are parading tonight. And it proves that I, not Darren, am the rightful heir." The words cracked like thunder. "Victor Bart. Nonsense. Lies." He reached forward as if he could snatch the truth away with his hands. But I stepped back, unfolding the papers, showing signatures older than Darren's trophies, older than my father's speeches. This is my grandfather's handwriting, his choice, his will, his legacy. And I will not let it be buried under your arrogance any longer. The hall erupted. Gasps, whispers, a murmur like a storm breaking loose. Some guests leaned forward in disbelief. Others turned to one another, already questioning the story they had been fed for years. Victor's face burned red, his voice cracking. "Do not disgrace this family." But it was too late. The family had disgraced itself. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't their silent shadow. I was their reckoning. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Guests leaned forward in their seats, whispering furiously, some gasping loud enough to echo over chandeliers. The golden glow that once celebrated Darren now flickered with doubt, suspicion, and disbelief. Victor, my father, slammed his hand against the podium. His voice roared through the speakers, sharp and commanding. This is a forgery, a desperate stunt. But even as he shouted, I could see the cracks in his mask, the veins in his neck, the tremble in his clenched fist. He was rattled. For the first time, the great Victor Vale looked cornered. Darren tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on," he sneered, stepping forward. "This is pathetic. Aaron's just jealous because I'm the one who made something of myself. He's always been a loser." He turned to the crowd, arms wide like a showman begging for applause. "You all know me. I've earned this. Don't let him ruin it with his... Read it." My voice cut through the noise like a blade. The room stilled again. My hand shook as I unfolded the letter and raised it high. The paper trembled, but my voice didn't. This is my grandfather's handwriting. Dated, signed, witnessed. He named me the heir because of one thing you never understood, Darren. Not brilliance, not arrogance, but character. And then I read it aloud. Every word, every sentence where Eldon Vale praised humility, resilience, humanity. Every line where he made it clear he saw me, even when no one else did. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Not a murmur, not a cough, nothing but the sound of my own breathing. I looked at my mother. Her face had drained of color. She gripped her necklace like it could protect her, eyes darting between me and Victor, realizing that everything they had built on Darren's pedestal was crumbling. Darren's smirk was gone. His jaw twitched, his eyes darted, searching for some foothold, but there was none. The arrogance that carried him all his life melted into something raw, something ugly, fear. And Victor? He didn't shout this time. He leaned forward, gripping the edge of the podium, his voice low but shaking with rage. "You think this changes anything? You're nothing. You've always been nothing." For years, I believed those words. For years, I carried them like chains. But standing there, in front of that crowd, I felt something different. I felt the weight break. "No," I said quietly, firmly. I was never nothing. I was only waiting for the truth to catch up. The guests turned their eyes to me. Not Darren, not Victor. Me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't a background shadow. I wasn't a forgotten son. I was the man my grandfather had always known I could be. And in that moment, I stood taller than all of them. The air in the ballroom felt different now. The applause that once showered Darren had been replaced with silence. The kind that carries weight. The kind that signals a shift no one can ignore. Eyes that had always overlooked me now followed my every move. I wasn't invisible anymore. Victor stood rigid behind the podium, jaw clenched, eyes burning into me. Marielle clutched her pearls like they were slipping through her hands, her composure unraveling with every second. And Darren looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The golden son, the chosen heir, suddenly stripped of his crown. For years, I dreamed of this moment. I imagined what it would feel like to be seen, to stand in the light instead of the shadows. But the reality was heavier, sharper. This wasn't about wealth. This wasn't about a Tesla or a mansion or even $75 million. This was about finally breaking free from the chains of being the forgotten son. I stepped forward, my voice steady. For my whole life, you told me I was nothing. You convinced me to believe it. But tonight, I know the truth, and so does everyone here. Whispers rippled again through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement. Some looked stunned. A few even smiled, as if they had been waiting for this moment too. I turned the letter over my hand. Grandfather's words still lingered in my chest. Humility, resilience, humanity. He hadn't chosen me because I was perfect. He had chosen me because I understood what it meant to fall and rise again. For the first time, I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't begging to be loved by parents who never would. I was claiming the man I was always meant to be. Darren tried one last time, voice breaking under the strain. "You think you can just walk in here and take everything?" I met his eyes. "No, Darren, I'm not taking anything. I'm receiving what was always mine. He had no response. His silence was louder than any protest. I looked out across the ballroom, at the guests, at the empire my grandfather built, at the future he wanted for me. And I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. For years, I said, voice rising with conviction, I was their forgotten son. But tonight, I stand here not forgotten, not overlooked. Tonight, I become a man my grandfather always knew I was meant to be. The words echoed, final and unshakable. The crowd erupted, not in polite applause, but in a roar of voices, gasps, cheers, clapping. Some rose to their feet. Some turned away from Darren entirely. The balance had shifted, and everyone felt it. I took a breath, steady and full. The shadows were behind me now. Ahead was light, uncertain but mine. It wasn't about the company or the money or the mansion. It was about freedom, about identity, about finally being able to look in the mirror and see myself, not as nothing, not as second best, but as Aaron Vale. And as I stepped off the stage, letter in hand, one thought carried me forward. This was not just a new chapter. This was the beginning of an entirely new book.